Hey listeners, this is your host Brian Almeida. I have a special announcement before we get started on this week's solo episode. I'm going to be offering a handful of my guests what I want to call a 15-minute discoverable call. This is just 15 minutes with me to discuss anything you want, podcasting, something going on in your life, facing vulnerability, whatever it might be. I'm going to include a link for my calendar in the show notes where you can book your 15-minute call, and I look forward to speaking with some of you soon. Thanks and take care. Welcome to the Vulnerable Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Almeida. Each week we'll share inspiring stories and tips on facing vulnerability and the lessons we can use to help us be able to find success and fulfillment in our own lives. With each episode, we hope to impact one listener, and if anything you've heard has impacted you, we'd appreciate you sharing it on social. Thank you for listening. Now let's get vulnerable. Today is Relatable Thursday. Welcome back for another episode of Relatable Thursday. So this week I want to talk about body image, basically the way that I've struggled with it for most of my life, and as always, just hoping to help other people that might be struggling with it now or struggled with it before, whatever the case might be. So essentially, for me, I've always been a little bit overweight. I've always been on the chubbier side, and I've always struggled with losing weight and gaining it back and just sort of being on that up and down roller coaster for most of my life. When I was younger, I would say it's a lot harder than it was now, simply because, in school, whether it's bullying or for me, it was a lot of this feeling of just not being as athletic as some of my friends. A lot of my friends were really good at a bunch of different sports, and I was always kind of a bit slower and not quite as athletic. So obviously there was some envy in there, and so it was just as a child, it's you feel a little bit differently about it. You don't necessarily have the confidence to deal with it, and so that was pretty much me growing up as a young kid. And even as I got into college, there was still that part of me that wanted to be a little bit more fit, even though I was gaining more confidence by then. There was still part of me that wanted to have that better physique, I guess it was. And I remember, I think it was maybe second year of college, I did end up losing quite a bit of weight. I think I lost something like 30 or 35 pounds. That summer I was pretty much just eating properly and going to the gym and doing all that. But the problem with me, and this has happened multiple times since then, is that when I go into losing weight, I go in like all in or nothing. Like I change my diet completely. I don't allow a lot of things into my diet. I will be very strict, measuring and doing all of these different things and just making it so strict that it's almost not like enjoyable. And I know like even my wife and I both were working with a trainer a few years back, and I think I probably made it even that much more unenjoyable for her, simply because I was, again, very strict, and I wouldn't at all, sort of, not even for a day, I wouldn't waver away from how I was supposed to be eating and everything. And so, that's been a struggle as well, because I can't seem to stick with it unless I stick with it 100%. When I fall off, it's the same thing. Like if I start to waver away from my diet or my whatever my eating habits are, and then slowly but surely I go all the way back to where I was before. And so I've, like I said, lost weight, 20, 30 pounds or more, and then shot back up and then back down and back up. And I'm sure that's not good for me at all either. And I think another part of it too is like, I've taken on too much of what society tells you it is to be fit and healthy, like that you have to have a six pack and you have to like look a certain way, which obviously is a lot harder for some people. And just having that goal to obtain can sometimes even be what deters you. And then there's been a lot of mixed messages throughout my life. I've had some people tell me that I'm need to lose weight and I'm overweight. And I've had other people that tell me that for my size, I don't even look overweight. And when I tell them how much I weigh, they're like, there's no way. And so it's mixed messaging, right? And obviously, I try not to listen to what people say, or not necessarily listen, but take their opinion and hold it with too much value. But at the end of the day, everything that's said to you does obviously affect you in one way or another, whether it affects you a lot or a little, or however it might affect you. It's going to affect the way that you think or what you think about yourself. And so for me, there's also the fact that a lot of people in my family suffer from diabetes, and so that's also been a concern for me. And So there's definitely still parts of me that definitely want to still get fit and want to still be healthier, just because I don't want to deal with any of these things later on in my life or even right now, right? But I've gotten to the point now where, whether I go at it, again, or whatever the case might be, like I've become more happy with who I am. I feel a lot healthier. There's still definitely things to work on, but I've become more aware of what feels good in my body and what doesn't. In terms of, like, for a while, I only really drink like a cup of coffee a day in the morning, but it was starting to affect my stomach, and so I cut it out. And again, I think there's part of me that again goes 100% or nothing. So like I completely cut it out of my diet. I didn't drink another cup of coffee for like a couple of months. Then I had like one or two here or there, and it seems to not bother me as much, but I'm still sort of staying away from it, and drinking more tea and stuff like that. And then even, for example, beef was another thing. For a while, it was really affecting my stomach, and so I completely cut beef out of my diet. And so I am proud of the fact that I'm listening to my body, but at the same time, I think I need to be careful as to, again, whether I go with that 100% out or, in sort of strategy, and need to just, again, pay more attention to how things feel. And then there's also the fact that, I've started to slow down when I eat. For most of my life, I ate pretty quickly. It was almost like I was in a race. Why? I don't know. That's just sort of how I ate. But I'm starting to try and eat a little bit slower, and also try and check in with myself to make sure that I'm not overeating, because that was easy for me as well before, where I would just, I'd go to a buffet and I'd come back with 2 plates instead of one, for example. And it was just sort of, something I did. I don't know why we do these things. I don't know if it's like, we want to show off and be like, look, I can have 2 plates at once. I don't really know, but I've become a little bit better at checking in with myself. And I've also noticed when I don't, like a couple weekends ago, I didn't check in with myself, and I went to bed that night with really bad stomach ache and felt like crap, and was like, okay, you know what? I gotta pay more attention, because otherwise this is the feeling that I get. And trust me, that feeling sucks. I'm sure some of you have experienced it, and it just does not feel good when you go to bed and your stomach's tight and just doesn't feel good whatsoever. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't know how many people listening to this have dealt with body image issues, body positivity, whatever the case might be. But, like I said, a couple of things that have helped me out the most is really just, the first thing I would say is gaining just a lot of confidence in who you are, not what you look like. Like I said, when I hit college, I started to gain more confidence in who I was as a person. I've talked about in the past where, when I was younger, I would try and sort of change myself based on who I was hanging around with and so on. And when I hit college is when I sort of started to get my real confidence about me. And that's carried on from there. And so I think that if you worry more about who you are on the inside and the person that you are, and you become confident in that, the body image stuff doesn't necessarily affect you as much. Obviously, like I said, there's still part of me that wants to lose weight, that wants to be healthier, but because I'm confident with who I am, I'm not as concerned about how I look and what people might think about me or whatever the case might be. I think another thing that a lot of people can do is stop paying so much attention to what society says is fit. Stop looking at magazines with guys that have six packs and huge pecs and all this kind of stuff, because I think that when we pay too much attention to what society tells us something is, it causes not only a lot of, sort of, I don't want to say mental health issues, but it definitely creates some issues where you're just thinking like, wow, if I don't achieve that, then like people aren't going to like me, or women aren't going to love me, or whatever the case might be. So you have to be very careful with what you pay attention to. I've noticed, when like Instagram, for example, if you're following a bunch of, fitness people and stuff like that, you're going to start to feel like crap about yourself. So, be careful who you follow. Like, and I said this last week on the social media episode, and it relates just as well to this episode today. Right. And then, like I said, pay attention. Like, I think the biggest thing that we can all do is just pay more attention to our bodies, how you're feeling. Like, if certain foods are making you feel crappy, or giving you a bad stomach ache or whatever it might be, like, pay attention to that. One thing my wife helped me do, which I need to probably get back at doing a little bit better, but one thing she helped me do is start a food journal. So in that food journal, it's literally just like the date, what I ate, and if I felt like crap afterwards, sort of thing. Like it's more of just paying attention to the days that my body doesn't feel so good, so that I can recognize that, this is what I ate that day. I didn't feel good. Now I can keep track of that. And if it continuously happens over a certain amount of time, then I know, okay, maybe I need to avoid this, whatever it is. Like I said, like beef, like that was the biggest one in the food journal as of recently. Was I noticed every time I ate like a big steak or something like that my stomach would either hurt, or whatever it might be, going to the washroom, whatever, like something wasn't right. And so that's, like I said, what made me sort of stay away from beef for a little while. I've introduced it back into my diet, but it's little amounts. It's not a huge like a piece of steak like I was eating before. So again, it's just making those adjustments. Like I said, with coffee, it was only one a day, but now it's maybe one a week, if that, right? So it's just making those adjustments to make sure that if it's not feeling right, maybe try and, like I said, avoid it a bit. And then I think really lastly, the biggest thing is that, you just, like I said, you have to sort of see, like, obviously go to the doctor and make sure your body's healthy. But if you feel healthy, like, focus on that rather than focusing on the physique part of it. And I know I sort of mentioned that with the society part, but I think it's important to recognize, how you feel. Like I said, is that if you feel like you're healthy, if you're not, having any sort of major issues, then, be happy with that. Like, don't necessarily just think that, when you get this, you're going to be happy. And next week on the interview episode that I have coming out, the guest is going to talk about like how he went on this journey with his physical appearance, where he wanted to have the six pack and everything, and he achieved it, and then he still wasn't happy in his life. So I think it's important to realize that it's more about being healthy than it is about what you look like. So yeah, guys, I mean, that's pretty much it for this week's episode. I hope that, as usual, that these things help. Like I said, whether you have body issues or not, I think even just making sure that like you feel good, that you have that confidence, I think these are keys to other parts of life as well. So like I said, don't pay so much attention to what society tells you. Definitely make sure that you're checking in with yourself, that you're paying attention to what you're eating, what feels good, what doesn't, and at the end of the day, like I said, be happy with the fact that you're healthy. Like, don't necessarily always try and go after these big dreams and goals of a certain physique and a certain body. Make sure you at least feel healthy first. And like I said, if you want to go down that path, like obviously I'm not saying don't become fit and get a certain physique, but make sure that you're not, that's not like your main focus, right? So yeah, if any of you guys want to reach out, you want to talk to me about this, maybe some issues that you've had, again, I'm not a specialist in terms of like, health and everything like that, but I'll definitely share more of my story or help where I can, or I can lead you in the right direction of people that I know that might be able to help you better. There's a lot of talk going on right now about health and what you eat and everything like that. And so, there's definitely more information out there, more information that I probably need to get into as well. But like I said, if there's any way that I can help, I'm here, I'm available. Like I said, reach out to me on social, book a discoverable call, whatever it might be, and we can discuss it further then. All right, guys. Well, that's it. Like I said, for this week, have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and follow the podcast on Instagram at vulnerable.podcast or on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can also follow me, Brian Almeida, by searching my name on all platforms. If the podcast has impacted you in any way, I would also greatly appreciate a review. Lastly, if you know anyone with a great story of going from struggle to success, I would love to have them on. Thank you and see you next week.